Remember how Digimon was pretty gosh darn popular in the West in the early 2000s and then it just dropped off the map suddenly? Remember that? No, because you were too busy playing Pokemon, you self-centered prat. Well, Digimon has made its triumphant return to English-speaking territories, ignoring Digimon Fusion of course, and it's in the form of Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth for the PlayStation 4 and Vita. Yes, Digimon has returned, after an absence of God knows how many years, with this, a game that was highly requested to be translated from Japanese and sent stateside. The premise generally revolved around a bunch of kids befriending creatures in the digital world, and they can digivolve into more powerful forms, with little variations to the formula here and there, depending on the game or anime series, like turning into Digimon, or fusing them together, or incinerating them, snorting their digital ashes and absorbing their essence. It probably is a thing. Digimon doesn't seem to have a concise set of rules anyway. It doesn't even have an actual concrete number of Digimon. They've lost count for God's sake. And we all thought Pokemon was bad. Anyway, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth is like a big love letter to fans of the older Digimon series, using mostly older Digimon designs and placing them in a more mature narrative. I remember the first few anime series with Patamon and Gatomon and Gulmon? Guilmon? What the fuck sort of name is that? But past that, I didn't follow it or obsess over it, so I have no idea why I got hyped about Cyber Sleuth so much. See, the thing is, Digimon don't necessarily take front and center on your adventure. To begin with, Digimon are seen as nothing but tools used to hack people and steal their account details and whatnot. In fact, even though this is a Digimon game, you don't need to know anything about Digimon to play. There are nods to the show here and there, and the game's roster of 240 monsters are pretty much all from the first few seasons of the anime, but apart from the nostalgic fan service, this is a game that holds itself on its own merits by telling a completely separate and more mature story. Just in case, spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about the opening of the game and a specific case about halfway through. That's it, but don't say I didn't warn you. The main backdrop of the game is a very Summer Wars-esque version of the internet known as Eden. URLs don't just lead you to web pages anymore, they lead you to virtual spaces in which you can freely walk around in, interact with people, and presumably bust a nut. Really curious as to how Pornhub works here. One day, in a chat room, this guy bursts in and says he's got a wonderful present waiting for everyone. But if they don't log in and accept it tomorrow, then they'll get hacked. Presumably by some 12-year-old with XXX in his name. No one wants a part of it, especially you. Like, I can understand why you don't, you're a bowl of ramen for fuck's sake. But these two are keen, and so is this guy, which is you, if you haven't figured it out yet. You choose your gender and name, and then you're off to Eden to get brutally hacked. After some kind of annoying running around like a headless Biomon, we meet Arata, or Arata, don't care about the pronunciation, the typical, reserved, I think I'm so great character. And then there's a Nokia 3310 with pink hair. And then we meet Mr. Navid again, who grants us the power to capture Digimon, effectively making you a hacker. Some white-haired dude finds us and gives us a choice of 3 Digimon as our starter, Terriermon, Palmon, and Hagurumon. Do we even need to say who my choice was? Of course I'm going for flappy-eared Pikachu, no question. So we do a bit of dungeon crawling and, in the meantime, meet Agumon and Gabumon, arguably 2 of the most famous Digimon. Now, I personally prefer anime dubs, but after hearing these guys in Japanese and then comparing them to their English voices, well...
What is this? What the fuck? Sam. What is this?
Soon after, however, the gang is attacked by a mysterious... Okay, that's a tentacle monster. Literally a tentacle monster. I've seen too much hentai to know where this is going. Arata and Nokia escape unharmed, but you get nommed on, and just barely manage to log out. Except now your body is digitized. A hot, sexy baby named Kyoko Kuremi appears out of nowhere in her Grand Theft Auto 3 car and whisks you away to a detective agency. And while there, you discover your ability to connect jump, allowing you to travel between networks, computers, essentially anything connected to the internet. You collect some avatar parts to restore your previous look, and from here, Kyoko insists you become her assistant detective, pretty much taking advantage of your unique half-cyber body. Notice how Digimon didn't really have much to do with that little synopsis? That's because, at least as far as I've played through, they don't. While many of the problems you solve are caused by Digimon in some way, they sort of take a back seat in the story. There's no trying to befriend all the Digimon or rescue them or whatever. Your goal is to return your half-cyber body to its original state, while also delving into a huge mystery surrounding the company that runs Eden, and what they have to do with a strange phenomenon known as digital shifts, where places in the real world take on a digital form. This is easily one of my favourite things about this game. Admittedly, it slogs in places as it has a lot of text, and more often than not Kyoko insists on rambling about something that's kinda arbitrary to the overall plot. But the story paves its way to some interesting topics and themes, most notably the world's overexposure to social media and the internet in general, as well as the nature of sites such as 4chan and Reddit. Despite how advanced the technology is in this world compared to ours, the story ends up being very relatable in a lot of instances. And the people you talk to don't just talk about Digimon either. In fact, Digimon are rarely mentioned outside of cutscenes, unlike Pokemon, whose dialogue is unrealistic and monotonous. NPCs will talk about actual things instead of saying something like, "Digimon are the greatest! Make sure you care for them! Did you know you can raise your Digimon's intelligence by giving—" Yeah, okay, I get it! And there's even a lot of mature stuff thrown in for good measure. One of the characters is trying to find out whether her dad was a victim of suicide or not, for example. And some of the quests are pretty... okay, this quest. So, two chicks from an occult club ask you to find out why their exact likeness is being sold as lifelike dolls. Already creepy enough, but you go and investigate and find this guy from the company who sells them, and he offers you one, though there is one small, teensy little caveat. You're not allowed to leave your room. Ever. I mean, it's a fucking stupid premise, likely written by someone from fanfiction.net, but the end of this case is depressing. You end up encountering one of the victims of this project. He's not just holed up in his room, but he's been lured into Eden and believes that to be the real world, while his real body remains unconscious. Kyoko implies the company running this scam likely breaks into the victim's room and sends their body to a foreign country, because a fresh young body could be used for all kinds of purposes over there. Though it's just a theory at that stage, the victim sure enough tries to log out, only to receive an error. Way for the future! While solving cases for the detective agency, you'll travel to a decent variety of locales in both Eden and the real world. You can even travel to Akihabara and see the Club Sega building. Neat! There's not much to do in these areas unless you're already in the middle of solving a case though, but they are well recreated and look pretty great. The same can be said for most of Eden too. It's just got this wonderful colour palette filled with bright, vibrant colours. It's just all very warm and welcoming and generally pleasant to be in. Shame if you drive a car in this world though. He never got to work that day. He never got home to see his family. For the rest of eternity, all he will hear, all he will see, is the anime-soaked hell of Akihabara. As long as I don't gotta watch Mermaid Melody, I don't give a shit! Depending on your tastes, you'll either see the gameplay as refreshingly old school or unbearably dated. All battles are random, just like Grandma used to make. You'll face off against Digimon in a turn-based, line-dancing fashion, with the right side of the screen showing the turn order, which is very reminiscent of Final Fantasy X. You can do a basic attack, choose a skill, use an item, guard, or swap your Digimon out. You can also auto-battle, but don't do that. Why is that even an option? Each Digimon has a type and an attribute. It's either a data, virus, or vaccine type, as well as an element like water or electric or whatever, and they all work in a rock, paper, scissors kind of way. So, Pokemon then. I mean, this is literally Pokemon. There is no escaping it. It's just elemental rock, paper, scissors. But then again, so is Pokemon. Pokemon's just rock, paper, scissors too. Whoever created rock, paper, scissors want to sue their asses. Alex kid, you wanna get in on that, son? Really though, battles in Digimon story are as simple as they come, which I personally really like. RPGs these days are so action-oriented that sometimes it's nice to just slow things down with a nice turn-based battle system every now and then. It wouldn't be Digimon unless you could Digivolve, of course. Each Digimon can Digivolve into at least 3 different species, but they can also de-Digivolve into a previous stage, which is useful for raising their level cap, learning new moves, and increasing their ABI, which is honestly the most annoying stat ever conceived. Sometimes you'll need a high enough ABI stat to be able to Digivolve to a particular form, but the only way to increase ABI is to constantly Digivolve and de-Digivolve, or feed them an extremely rare kind of meat in the game's farm system. It's needlessly complicated for no other reason than to pad out the game a little bit, though high ABI does grant you better stats. I think. It's just a pain in the ass. But collecting Digimon, evolving them, and raising them on the Digifarm is, apart from this hiccup, pretty gosh dang addictive. It's always fun to see what your prized Digimon is going to turn into, and the game is a little more lenient than Pokemon in terms of what kind of party you can have. There aren't nearly as many types to remember, and they don't have a million weaknesses and resistances, so you're, for the most part, totally okay just picking Digimon you like and blitzing through the game. It also helps that you have a reserve of 8 Digimon, just in case. You know, there are so many great things so far in Digimon story that would make Pokemon a lot better. Expanded move pools, mature story, voice acting, a ton of space for your party, and a sort of HM system that doesn't fucking ruin your party. Digimon story's got some great stuff that Pokemon could totally pick up on. But do you know what Digimon could learn from Pokemon? So okay, kudos to the guys who translated this. They translated a lot of dialogue for an admittedly pretty small audience, and for the most part, it's pretty solid. But it's glaringly obvious when there's a mistake. For example, the Eaters are sometimes mistranslated as Bakemon, so sometimes you'll be told you're gonna fight a Bakemon when in reality you're just going after one of those tentacle things. The big problem is that sometimes the translators didn't quite try hard enough to make some of the dialogue understandable from a Westerner's perspective, making it not as accessible as it could have been. While sometimes the translators tried too hard to to appeal to English speakers, with some dialogue coming off as cringy. For example, most will find it confusing that characters are weirded out when someone mentions certain idioms, such as break a leg. Others, such as this fucking disgraced Jimmican, use internet slang in their regular vocabulary. I've seen people say zomg, roffle, lol, and even the dreaded lolololololol. I get that we're technically on the internet, but every time I saw Jimmican say zomg, I died a little inside. If you were hoping for an English dub, unfortunately you'll have to make do with Japanese voices. They're mostly tolerable, plus they only appear in story cutscenes for the most part, but some people are going to be turned off by them. Personally, I just skip through the text as fast as I can read it, but sometimes the voice acting sounds so ridiculous, I can't help but to just sit back and listen, especially with this chick.
見てるだけでドキドキしてきちゃう。ああ、我慢できない。
Some of the dialogue is just straight up, what? For example, there's this bit where some guy will give you the information you need if you get a certain woman's name and address. The woman in question says he's been stalking her, and asks you to tell him to leave her alone. Your dialogue options are, a stalker? Unbelievable! Die, stalker, die! And Stalker, directed by Tarkovsky? What the fuck? Now, unfortunately, due to budget constraints and being placed in the receivership, we're going to have to terminate your employment, effective immediately. I'm very sorry. The Terminator, directed by James Cameron! Sir, if you will not vacate the premises yourself, we will be asked to call in security, and we do not want... A few players are also a bit sour considering the silent protagonist trope is evoked. He or she will sometimes talk to themselves, but amidst conversations with other characters, he'll just emote with exclamation marks and ellipses. There's plenty of meat to the game, but in between story missions, the story screeches to a halt to force you to take on some casework, or in simple terms, side quests. Some are interesting, others just end up feeling like nothing more than padding. Do you feel like fixing a shopping center's air conditioning? Oh yeah, because that sure sounds cool. I wrote that down in the script and I didn't even realize it made such a terrible joke. I'm sorry. The quest padding, as well as the constant need for digivolving and de-digivolving your Digimon, that's a lot of digis, can make the game feel a little repetitive. I might recommend watching a podcast or listening to music in the background at times. Though if you're not affected by the repetition, then do it because the music kinda sucks. It isn't bad by any stretch, but you will be delving into the same dungeon several times, and the few music tracks you'll hear end up becoming nothing more than white noise, due to the lack of any memorable riffs or motifs. Though this song is god tier. So admittedly, this game is going to appeal to a very niche audience. It's kinda tedious and drawn out sometimes, and the translation is occasionally iffy, but I'm still really enjoying my time with Digimon Story. I think it's because it's daring to do what Pokemon won't, take an established franchise originally aimed at kids and acknowledging that its intended audience has matured, thus offering a substantially more adult narrative while giving us the monster caption gameplay that's appealed to us ever since we were kids. Plus, it's on console, for fuck's sake. It's not as refined as Digimon, but I think fans can take solace in the fact that Digimon finally has a game that can at least stand up to the Nintendo cash cow. Though, you gotta step up your game in the monster design department. This is a blob. This is a Sunflora. This is a literal piece of shit. And this... What the fuck even is this? What the fuck even is this? Using mostly older Digimon designs and placing them in the more mature... Using mostly older Digimon designs and placing them in the more mature... Why is it so hard to say? Jesus. Despite how advanced the technology is in this world compared to ours, the story ends up being very relatable in a lot of instances. Wow, I fucking smashed that. I hope so, anyway. Bet you Aaron will hear it and he'll just be like, oh, fucking... Why do I talk about myself in the third person? This isn't the Acquaintnces.
I've got a new friendship bracelet for you.
What is this?